The jungle was silent, but not dead. Cape Gloucester. New Britain, December 30th, 1943, just before midnight, a Marine patrol moved through the steaming undergrowth, boots sinking into black mud, raindrops hissing off jungle leaves. The men were tired, wet, and tense. The Japanese had hit them hard the day before. Everyone expected another ambush. No one spoke. Except suddenly, someone was gone. Private First Class Anthony M. Valera had been there second in line. Then the jungle swallowed him. No sound, no scream, no flash. Just gone. The patrol froze, rifles up, eyes scanning trees. They waited 10 minutes before retreating. 1 man lost was better than 10 dead in a trap. At dawn, a second patrol was sent to sweep the area. They expected a body, maybe a rifle, maybe a torn patch of uniform. What they found was something else. 6 Japanese soldiers lay dead in a 30-yard radius, sprawled in mud. Eyes wide, throats crushed, necks broken. The 7th was found 10 feet up, suspended in a banyan tree like a puppet without strings. His face was frozen in shock, and crouched beneath the final body, arms folded, eyes blank, soaked in blood that wasn't his own, was Valera. His rifle was still slung across his back. Magazine was full. The chamber empty. He hadn't fired a single shot. What happened in those 3 minutes would become legend among the 1st Marine Division. But the truth wasn't luck or miracle. It was muscle memory. The culmination of over 200 hours of close combat training, and the sudden, lethal application of a different kind of firepower. Not bullets. Hands. World War II is often remembered through the roar of engines and the crack of rifles. Steel helmets, machine guns, tanks rolling through shattered cities. Firepower was king, whoever shot first. Won. But for PFC Tony Valera, none of that mattered, because in the jungle, where lines blurred and ambushes struck at whisper distance, the rules changed. The difference between life and death wasn't just a faster trigger finger, it was who could turn instinct into action when the rifle failed. The common belief that war was a contest of who had the most bullets, the biggest guns, the longest reach. But men like Valera were trained for a different kind of warfare. Dirty, close, without warning. And what he did that night on Cape Gloucester shattered the myth. This wasn't a last-ditch brawl. It wasn't blind luck or movie script heroism. It was deliberate, practiced, lethal movement, strikes delivered with anatomical precision, takedowns designed to silence, not just subdue. Even other Marines struggled to understand what they saw. "How'd you take them all down?" one asked. Valera's reply was cold. They lined up. The truth was more brutal. The Japanese troops had launched a silent infiltration standard night harassment. Bayonets drawn, grenades ready, but they hadn't counted on one man trained to move like shadow and strike like a hammer. No rifle, no bayonet, no backup, just a man who had spent months preparing for the moment, when his firearm failed and his fist took over. In a war defined by artillery barrages and carrier strikes, Valera's story reads like a glitch in the narrative. But it's real. And it forces us to ask, what if the deadliest weapon on the battlefield wasn't a machine? What if it was muscle, breath, and the will to end a fight with nothing but bone, to understand why Valera's hands became weapons? We need to zoom out beyond the banyan tree, beyond the island. We need to see the war as it was fought in the Pacific. Cape Gloucester wasn't Normandy. It was jungle warfare at its ugliest. Rain 28 days a month, visibility often less than 15 feet, ambushes not across open fields, but from tree branches and burrowed root systems, weapons jammed. Radios failed, maps meant nothing. The Marines who landed on New Britain in December 1943 faced a Japanese defense hardened by years of fighting the Chinese and dug into volcanic rock. They weren't reckless. They were prepared, and they were silent. Japanese patrols moved at night, barefoot or in split-toe jikatabi. They didn't use gunfire. They used blades quick, quiet, terrifying, doctrinally. Japanese infantry were trained in night assaults, and if the Americans had one weakness, it was over-reliance on firearms in conditions where sound meant death. Enter the Marine Raider and Scout Sniper schools. Units like the 1st Recon Battalion received not just marksmanship and jungle navigation, but hours of close combat instruction. Knife fighting, bone breaks, strangulation techniques, disarm drills. It wasn't sport, it was doctrine. PFC Valera wasn't special in that sense. He was standard issue for a certain type of unit. What separated him was application under pressure when every muscle screamed freeze. And instead, he moved. The 30-06 M1 Garand was a masterpiece at 200 yards. But in the dark tangle of banyan roots, it was a steel club at best. When a bayonet came thrusting from the black, no Marine had time to raise aim, fire. You dodged, or you died, and some, like Valera, did more than dodge. They countered. They ended fights before a sound could escape. Because in that terrain, if one man made noise, 10 more died. The Marine Corps didn't advertise this training. There were no stats to track it. But in places like Cape Gloucester, Bougainville, and Peleliu it kept happening. Rifles silenced, knives sheathed, fights decided in 5 seconds by bare hands. The myth of firepower falls apart when you look at the hard numbers of jungle combat. In the New Britain campaign alone, over 40% of U.S. and small arms casualties occurred within 15 yards closer than the average suburban driveway. At that range, rifles are slow, bayonets clumsy, and sound fatal. The average firefight in the Pacific jungle lasted less than 90 seconds before devolving into chaos. Radios failed, visibility collapsed, and units scattered. Initiative shifted to whoever moved first and with certainty. Japanese infiltration teams, like the ones Valera faced, were trained to use blades, grenades, and silence. They often operated in groups of 3 to 6. In 1943 alone, such attacks accounted for dozens of U.S. fatalities per week in key zones like Cape Gloucester, Bougainville, and the Northern Solomons. But perhaps the most revealing stat. A study by the 1st Marine Division after the Cape Gloucester operation noted that at least 17 confirmed enemy kills across 2 weeks were credited to unarmed combat or non-firearm engagement. That's official language for someone killed them without a shot. Valera's case wasn't isolated. It was a symptom of warfare that moved faster than tactics, of terrain that punished the loud and rewarded the prepared, and of Marines who trained not just to shoot, but to survive when the gun was useless. These numbers aren't speculation. They're pulled from after-action reports, divisional logs, and medical examiner statements. The men died, the stats were written, and in the margins, they tell a brutal truth. Sometimes, killing had nothing to do with bullets. Sometimes, the math of survival favored a man who could move, strike, and disappear before anyone pulled a trigger. Valera was one, but there were others, names forgotten, actions recorded only in blood and silence. The fight began at 03:11 a.m. PFC Tony Valera had just rotated off a 3-hour watch cycle. He was halfway through rewrapping his feet when the first sound hit, leaves shifting. Not under wind, but weight, human weight. The jungle was never silent. But Valera had spent 6 weeks learning the difference between background and threat. This wasn't birds. This wasn't monkeys. It was men. The Marine outpost at Hill 440 was textbook vulnerable perimeter lines strung with wire. Yes, but only one working field phone. Radios failed daily. That night, it was raining. The kind of tropical downpour that swallowed noise and masked movement. At 0312, a Japanese infiltrator slit the throat of Corporal Dean, one of Valera's fire team. No gunfire, no scream, just a wet thud as Dean's body slumped against a log. Valera didn't call for help. He didn't have time. The second infiltrator came at him directly bayonet low, feet silent. Valera's Garand was propped against a tree, unloaded. He didn't reach for it. He moved forward, using a deflection technique drilled 100 times in training. He slapped the bayonet upward with his left forearm, pivoted inside the Japanese soldier's guard, and drove a knife-hand strike into the throat. The cartilage collapsed. The soldier dropped. He caught the second one by the collar as he turned to flee, threw him into a tree trunk. One blow. Skull fracture. Dead. 0314, 2 down. The third came in screaming. Panic. He'd seen his team die in seconds. He charged with a Type 30 bayonet raised overhead. Valera sidestepped, grabbed the wrist mid-swing, twisted into an arm bar, and drove the elbow until it shattered. The weapon fell. Valera caught it before it hit the ground. Throat stab. Clean. 0315, 3 bodies at his feet. He paused, listened. More were coming. This wasn't a raid. It was a decapitation strike, a standard Japanese tactic meant to kill NCOs and sow chaos before a larger push. Valera knew the pattern. He sprinted 20 yards across the perimeter to a blind spot near the latrine, found 2 more soldiers cutting wire. One still held pliers. Valera grabbed a chunk of coral rock, swung from behind, skull crushed. The other turned too slow. Valera tackled him, mounted, crushed the larynx with both thumbs. 0317, 5 kills. No weapon fired. The last 2 came together, flanking, expecting disarray. They didn't find it. Valera was waiting, crouched behind a fallen tree. As the first stepped past, Valera surged upward, jammed a broken bayonet into the armpit, upward, into the heart. The final soldier saw the motion, turned, raised his rifle. Valera lunged, not for the weapon, but the legs. A judo sweep sent the man down hard, chin first, dazed, 1 stomp, neck snapped. 0319 a.m., 6 minutes, 9 dead. Valera sat in the mud, breathing hard. He picked up his Garand, still unfired. He walked back toward the command tent, boots soaked, uniform torn, blood on his knuckles, his forearms, his face. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. When Captain Hensley saw the bodies, he just muttered, "Jesus." Valera walked past him, sat down, and began rewrapping his feet. The next 12 hours revealed the full damage and full impact of what Valera had done. First, the toll: 9 dead Japanese soldiers, all from the 7th Company, 141st Regiment, part of a larger detachment probing American lines. This unit wasn't expendable. It was reconnaissance in force meant to map weak points and trigger collapse. Valera had killed its entire forward element. Second, the effect: the 141st push stalled, badly. At 0400, Japanese artillery that had been timed to coincide with infiltration never fired. Why no green flares from forward scouts? No signalman alive to mark progress. The infiltration force was supposed to eliminate outpost resistance, then signal for a push through Hill 440's east flank. Instead, the flank was alert, reinforced, waiting. At 0520, a Marine patrol found additional enemy bodies deeper in the tree line, cut down by rifle fire from Marines who'd been roused by the chaos Valera triggered. 3 more Japanese soldiers, all dead mid-crawl. At 06, Euro Company HQ logged sustained alert status, but no full-scale Japanese attack followed. The after-action report later stated enemy presence neutralized before a broader offensive could take shape. Unknown. Marine initiated counteraction with extreme efficiency. No friendly casualties. But that was just the beginning. By 10:00 a.m., a full quarter of the battalion had heard the story. Not all the facts, but the headline, "One guy killed 9 Japs with his bare hands." Some said he used a shovel. Some said he was shot and kept fighting. Some said he strangled all 9. The details blurred, but the morale impact did not. Men who had felt fear the night before now whispered Valera's name like a shield. Platoon leaders reported higher alertness across the board. Sentries stayed sharp. Fire discipline improved. Even the crustiest gunnery sergeants admitted something strange had happened. And the Japanese, by nightfall, they had pulled back. Division intel from decrypted communications confirmed a temporary stand-down order in the sector. Not because of overwhelming firepower, not because of tanks, because of confusion, fear, uncertainty. 9 missing soldiers, no reports, no gunfire, just silence and corpses. The math of collapse had shifted. 1 man, 0 bullets, 9 kills, and an entire enemy company left blind and leaderless. Valera didn't brag. He didn't speak to the press. But the impact of what he did, of how quickly and surgically he killed, reverberated through the unit like a shockwave. For the 1st Marine Division, Hill 440 wasn't just held, it was hardened. And it all started with a fight that never made a sound. The events at Hill 440 could have been dismissed as anomaly, a fluke, a one-man outlier performance in a chaotic night. But they weren't. Because within 72 hours, Valera wasn't just being noticed, he was being weaponized. On July 18th, 1943, Captain Hensley received a request from Regimental HQ identify and forward any Marines with demonstrated unarmed or close-quarters combat effectiveness. Hensley didn't hesitate. He sent one name, Valera. By July 20th, Valera was reassigned temporarily to the regimental rear, 7 miles inland near a makeshift airstrip. There, under canvas tarps and with only limited training materials. A new unit was forming Detachment Recon Close, unofficially dubbed the Grapplers by the men. It wasn't standard towing, it wasn't in the manual, but after Valera's kills, High Command saw a possibility. The mission was blunt assess whether hand-to-hand specialists could serve as mobile response assets, rapid deployment fighters where firearms might be too slow or too loud. Valera didn't say much, but what he did teach shocked the instructors. His moves were clinical, not flashy, not judo for the parade ground. This was knife-edge efficiency deflections, joint breaks, crush strikes, not disabling blows, killing blows. He demonstrated on sandbags and logs, on dummies made of bamboo, on live partners, carefully, and then in controlled scenarios. July 23rd, field test a mock ambush drill. Valera and 2 grapplers were dropped at night near an enemy trail. Their objective, intercept a moving patrol without alerting other units. 3 minutes in, they made contact. 2 Japanese scouts, no shots fired, 2 necks snapped. 7 minutes later, a radio man attempted to flee. Valera tackled him, held the mouth shut, then used a trench knife to finish the job. By dawn, 5 enemy bodies, no American wounds, no alerts triggered. Back at camp, the colonel in charge said just one thing. "We're not training a platoon. We're training a weapon." Word filtered upward. Even Marine raiders, long considered the elite, took notice. Requests came in. Could Valera be seconded? Could he train small teams? Could his methods be scaled? He said yes, quietly, without ego, but on one condition: no press, no photo, and no names. "This only works," he said, "if they never see it coming." By August, Valera was back on the front, but not alone. 3-man cells now patrolled key sectors: 1 scout, 1 rifleman, 1 grappler. They operated in silence, struck without warning. In September, Valera led a raid that killed 11 enemy soldiers in under 10 minutes without discharging a single firearm. No one laughed about BB guns anymore. They didn't call him crazy. They called him something else, ghost hands. And in quiet corners of the Pacific, the enemy started leaving notes on bodies. Beware the silent one. October 2nd, 1943, Cape Gloucester, New Britain. 03, 18 hours. Rain pounded the jungle like fists. Sheets of water reduced visibility to 5 feet. Every leaf shimmered. Every sound was muffled. But movement still mattered. On a narrow trail choked by bamboo, 14 Japanese soldiers advanced in a staggered line. Light infantry, bayonets fixed. No machine guns, just Arisaka rifles, sabers, and confidence. They weren't expecting contact. The Marines in this sector had pulled back after days of shelling. Recon flights said the line was thin. Now was the time to push. They were wrong. Hidden 20 yards ahead in the brush. A 3-man grappler cell waited. The center Valera. No radio, no backup. Just signal cords tied to boots. A tug meant danger. 2 tugs meant engage. Valera lay flat, nose inches from the mud. 1 breath every 10 seconds. In his left hand, a K-bar. In his right, a sharpened entrenching tool. Quiet steel. The lead Japanese scout came within 6 feet. Valera didn't pounce. He didn't shout. He pivoted his hips, let the man pass, and slipped the knife under the rib cage from behind. 1 strike, up and in, no scream. Just a wet exhale and a collapsing body. The signal cords tugged once, then twice. Engage. What followed was 92 seconds of controlled violence. The rifleman to Valera's left rose first. He clubbed the second scout with a rifle butt, then dropped back. The 3rd Marine, a silent grappler, rushed the center of the column. Arms low, hands aimed for throats. Valera surged forward. In 3 seconds, he had cut down the 3rd man with the swing of the entrenching tool. It struck the collarbone, split flesh and bone, and came out wet. Chaos rippled through the Japanese column. 1 man fired. Muzzle flash lit the trail and marked him. The rifleman dropped him with a clean shot. The rest tried to flee. Wrong move. The jungle was boxed. Deadfall to the right, mud pit to the left. They had 1 exit back down the trail, but Valera anticipated it. He moved like a shadow. 1 man fell with a crushed throat. Another was gutted as he turned. A 3rd tripped, then was strangled with a boot across the windpipe. When the rain lightened at 03:28, only 2 Japanese soldiers remained alive. They crawled into the brush, bleeding and silent. They weren't pursued. The message was delivered. When the Marines radioed HQ at 0400, the kill count was 12. 0 friendly losses. But the colonel reviewing the after-action report said something different. This isn't ambush. This is assassination in motion. Valera's name wasn't in the report. Just a Code Unit 4 silent engagement, jungle intercept. But among the men who passed down the story, the phrase was always the same. The jungle froze that night because it heard something more terrifying than gunfire. It heard nothing. Valera returned to base that night, soaked, bruised, and silent. His uniform was torn. His K-bar needed cleaning. The blade of the entrenching tool was bent, but his eyes, the men said, were still. Not cold, not wide, just still. Like a machine that had completed its cycle and now waited for the next input. The corpsman asked if he needed morphine. Valera said no. He needed a wire brush. That was all. By dawn, the Grappler squad was prepping for redeployment. No medals, no citations. Not even a name in the log. Just a number, Grappler 5. The war didn't know what to do with men like Valera. He didn't fit doctrine. He didn't fit charts or tables. His record didn't list his kills. His hands did. His actions were logged under terms like unconfirmed engagements, close-range interdictions, or simply denied contact. But in the Pacific, among the soaked ridgelines and screaming canopies, he was legend. Because in a theater that burned through bullets like rations, Valera proved that steel, bone, and will could rewrite the rules. He didn't kill for glory. He didn't kill for vengeance. He killed because someone had to. Because the jungle didn't respond to paperwork. It responded to presence. And Valera's presence changed everything. Grappler squads expanded after 1943. 32 men trained. Only 7 graduated. Valera trained them all. His methods, simple kill without sound, move without trace, strike without delay. By 1945, entire Japanese patrols vanished in places no one could explain. The term ghost contact entered intelligence reports. Some in command protested, called it savagery, called it unnecessary. But every time one of those unnecessary men stopped a battalion-level probe without firing a shot, those protests fell quiet. Valera didn't speak much after the war. He returned to Chicago, opened a repair shop, fixed bicycles, kept to himself. When a young veteran asked about the Pacific, Valera smiled. Just once. Then he said, "The knife never jams." That's all he ever said about it. But in the basement of that shop was a crate. Inside one bent entrenching tool, filed sharp like a scythe, one Ka-bar, handle wrapped in faded tape, and one journal, 78 pages, no dates, just sketches, trees, trails, silhouettes. One drawing showed 2 hands in the mud, waiting, watching. The final page read only 5 words. Silence kills more than fire. That was his legacy. Not medals, not promotions, not even memory. Just the proof that in a war of machines and mortars, the deadliest weapon was still the man who moved without sound. If you'd never heard of the man who used his bare hands to erase entire patrols, now you have. His name may never be etched in marble, but his legacy is cut into the roots of every jungle he walked. If this story made you see the Pacific War differently, made you realize that not all killers carried guns, then don't let it disappear. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Subscribe for more true, untold combat episodes from the archives they forgot to teach in school, and drop a comment below. Was Valera a hero, a ghost, or something in between? Next episode, we follow a different kind of ghost. A silent killer not made of flesh and blood, but of fuel, speed, and flawed engineering. The Americans called it the Widowmaker. The Luftwaffe called it their future, until one microscopic flaw turned it into a flying coffin. The jet that promised German victory until it devoured its own pilots. 1 gram of dust, 1,000 wrecks. The day Germany's miracle jet died. Don't miss it.